I'm just in the middle of our online event.
Good morning. We are so happy to see you here. This is the first of our virtual OWA series. If you're not familiar with OWA, it is Ohio Women's Outdoor Adventures. And this is a program we've had for, I think this is our 7th year now. Guys, if I'm wrong, correct me. So normally this is a fall get together we have, but unfortunately last year, as I'm sure you're aware, we were not able to do this. So we decided if you couldn't come to OWA, we were going to bring OWA to you. So this presentation this morning is just to give you kind of a little taste of what OWA is and what our workshops would be. So I'm going to introduce everybody really quick, but before I do that, I want to bring your attention to up in the right-hand corner of your screen, you should have a little Q&A box, and it will have 2 conversation bubbles with a question on it. You can use that to talk to us and ask us questions as you go, just to kind of, get a feel for it and make sure it's working for everybody. Do us a favor and just drop us a comment in there, say hello and tell us where you're from. I'm going to introduce everybody this morning. So first of all, Mandy Walske.
Hi, I'm Mandy Walske from Cowan Lake State Park in Southwest Ohio.
And next up, Kyle Casey.
Hi, everybody. Yep, I'm Kyle Casey, and I'm one of the naturalists down in Southeast Ohio at Hocking Hill State Park.
Miss Jenny Richards, going live.
Hello.
There you are, Jenny.
Hello, good morning, everyone. Happy to be here today, and I'm coming to you from Shawnee State Park, also the furthest southernmost park in Ohio.
All right, Miss Erin Shaw, you are up next.
Hi, my name is Erin Shaw. I'm from Cedar Creek State Park, Southwest Ohio.
And last but certainly not least, joining us this morning for tech support, this is Lauren Stewart.
Good morning. My name is Lauren Stewart. I'm naturalist at Maumee Bay State Park, which is in Northwest Ohio, so I'm representing the North.
All right, so this is our staff that is with us. We are all ODNR with the Division of Parks and Watercraft. And without much further ado, Kyle, are you good to go?
Yep, I think I'm ready.
All right, Kyle is going to be talking to us this morning about cast iron cooking. So how to cook some really yummy stuff over your campfire. Here you go, Kyle.
All right. Hey, everybody. Yep, so I'm Kyle, and right now I'm down at Old Man's Cave, right behind the new visitor center in the naturalist cabin. So that's the background you see here. And today we're going to do some cast iron cooking. And normally that's about all the programs I do. You might have to zoom in pretty close, but you might notice that I don't really miss too many meals. So I want to show you guys what we're working with today. We're going to work with some Dutch ovens. All right. So before we get into making food, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history of our Dutch ovens. Right. So with Dutch in the name, you can really kind of get an idea of where they come from, right? The Netherlands. So they really began to get popular in the 1600s, but there were similar cooking utensils and ovens that went on centuries before that, into the 8th and 9th century. But the kind that we're going to work with today really started to gain popularity in the 1600s. But in the Netherlands, when they were using these, they weren't cast iron like we're using. They were mostly copper and brass, which were pretty expensive materials. But it was really a very widely known process. But due to the fact that the materials to use them were so expensive, it wasn't really used. So that prompted an Englishman named Abraham Darby to take on the challenge to learn as much about this process as he could so that he could find a way to bring this over to England. Right? So 1600s, he heads on over to the Netherlands and takes on the challenge of learning as much as possible. And in the early 1700s, after many failed attempts, he was finally able to make a mold out of this, which allowed him to patent it. And he called it the Dutch ovens in reference to where it originally started from. But he was able to make it with cast iron. All right. Now, what he would have used at the time is not like the traditional cowboy pioneer Dutch ovens that you think of over a campfire. They were more like this, and I'm going to walk up closer to the camera where you can see it. Right, so these are what's known as a kitchen Dutch oven, right? So there's no legs on the bottom, it's all flat, and then the top is a rounded lid, right? And a lot of the times you might find these in kitchens today because you can slide these real easy right in your oven. And a lot of the times today you'll find enameled version. It makes it real nice and pretty. But these were really popular because now people had a consistent way to cook inside their hearths, their stone fireplaces, inside their own homes. Right? So I'm going to put this down a second. All right, so what we're going to do next, let me find a nice empty one here. This one will do. We are going to talk about the evolution of the Dutch oven that I've got here. This is the one that you really think of that's got these feet on the bottom, the lip on the top that you would really hang over a fire. You'll see a nice stack of them, right? So after Abraham Darby brought these over to England, we had our British Americans starting to bring the kitchen ovens over to the new colonies, right? And they were very popular. But after America gained its independence and there was a big shift westward, these kitchen ovens were not very practical because you had a lot of folks living off the trail, and you'd find a lot of chuck wagons down in the south near Texas. But when folks are moving, constantly moving on the trail, something like this, you can't really put in a fireplace, right? Because you're using campfires outside. So that caused a big issue because everybody loved their cast iron. And to solve this issue, we had a person you guys might have heard about before, maybe in your American history class in high school or in college, but there was a man named Paul Revere, clicking some bell, right? He was an early American revolutionist, very well known, yelling the British are coming, right? But he was also a metallurgist by trade, right? He was a blacksmith and a silversmith. And he took on the challenge of trying to adapt these Dutch ovens so that people could use them as they continued to move west. And so what he ended up doing after trial and error is he added on those three little legs that I just showed you on the bottom, and then the lip. Instead of having that as a round, he made it flat with a lip all the way around it. And so what that allowed for is to be set with the legs on top of a campfire so you could cook it from the bottom, or you could also still hang it. But with that flat lid with the lip, you could now make a stack, right? So you would have one on the bottom, and then this one doesn't have legs on it, but then you would stack it on top. And you could keep doing that to further the cooking process without having everything all spread out, so you can keep your campsite pretty small and organized. All right, yeah, so without Mr. Paul, we might not have what we've got today with these ovens. All right, so let's talk a little bit about food. And this is probably why you're even watching my portion anyway, because this is the good part. This is why I'm here. All right, so what we are going to do is we are going to make some Cornish game hens with some vegetables. And it's going to be super, super good. In addition to that, I'm also going to make a side of some cornbread, and we're going to do some filled and baked apples for a dessert. All right, so I prepped a little bit just for time's sake for this presentation, because it would take quite a bit to actually chop up all the ingredients and all that. So I'll pop this open. For this, and if anybody is interested, there will be a PowerPoint. It might be into a PDF, but there will be instructions with a recipe for people to download later. And you can also reach out by email if you want to get a copy of that too, if you have technical issues online somehow. But I'll show you guys here for this recipe, the vegetables. We've got a line of potatoes over here. We've got some mushrooms, some cut up onions, cauliflower, carrots, and broccoli.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah.
It's Jenna. I just want to bring everybody's attention. I actually just posted my email in the chat for people. So that's what you can use. If you want the recipe when Kyle's done, you can use that email to get a hold of me and I will forward it to him. So contacts posted.
Perfect. Thanks, Jenna. And then we also have the main course. If you can see that pretty well on the camera of my laptop here, we have got our Cornish hens all packaged and ready to go. All right. So before I put those in my ovens, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about fire. Right, so I've got the camera set up so you can kind of see it over here. It's not really bellowing because when you're cooking inside on a fireplace like I am, you kind of want to have it low and slow. That's your best rule of thumb, because if you get a really high flame going, you've got a risk of actually catching on fire. And I think the last thing my job wants is me to catch our historic naturalist cabin on fire. So you really want to keep this thing low and slow, and you'll get a really good even cook that way. Especially with these Dutch ovens, that's the best way to do it. Now, the most consistent way for you folks at home to cook with a Dutch oven would be to use charcoal, right? You can use any charcoal as long as it's a long-lasting, consistent one, right? So maybe a brand that's been around for a while. And what you'll do is you're going to use the 2-to-1 ratio, right? So you're going to have twice the amount of coals on the top than you are on the bottom. Now, it varies every now and then by 1 or 2 coals, but generally that's what you want. And in that download that you can check out later, there's a chart in there that'll show you the size of the oven and the temperatures you can achieve based on the amount of coals that's on the bottom and the top, depending on what you're trying to cook, right? Yeah, so say I wanted to cook something at 350 degrees, that'd be something about like 8 coals on the bottom and 16 coals on the top, right? So that's the way you can most accurately do a bake in a Dutch oven. And really you're accurate by around 10 degrees plus or minus your desired outcome, as long as you stay up on top of it. But for today, for this event, we're going to have a little bit more fun in here. And I've had a fire going for a while building up coals because we are going to do it the pioneer way, because they didn't have charcoal, they had firewood. So I've been burning down some coals so that we are going to use firewood coals instead of charcoal. Now, you can also do this, but make sure you've got the time to do it, right? Because this method is really hit or miss, especially when you first start doing it. It really takes some repetition to kind of get the experience needed to know kind of what you're working with, because the firewood coal, it's not the same shape or size as you would have that consistent little briquette, right? So you really want to keep an eye out for that. And, you know, it's hit or miss. Just have fun with it. So I am going to go ahead and start putting stuff in the oven. I'll use this one here. So this is a 12-inch Dutch oven, and they come in all different shapes and sizes. You can have 14-inch, big old 16-inch ones. You can even find smaller ones, 10. It just depends on how much you're trying to make. So I'll set that down there. I'll take the lid off. And I will show you if I can get it without moving all my firewood. Here we go. This little device here, this is for picking up the lid, right? So when you're going to have those coals directly on that cast iron, it's going to get really, really hot. So you can't really just grab that, right? You're going to burn the crap out of your hand. You could also use a heat-resistant glove, but this is really the easiest way to work with it and move it around. So really, it works just like this, right? So I can clip right onto it. I pull with the handle, and it's there. It's not going anywhere, right? So I can safely move the thing around when there's hot coals on it. All right. All right, so I'm going to grab my recipe, and to show you what that download looks like, it'll be just like this, that PDF that Jenna mentioned earlier that you can get from her, right? All right, so we're going to start with those hens. We'll get these ready. Now we don't want to put these birds directly on the bottom because that's going to sear it too quickly and they're just going to burn, and that's going to really ruin some of the taste. So to prevent that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it on a trivet, right? So this is just another little cast iron piece, but you can use any kind of trivet you want as long as it's oven safe. And essentially, if you don't know what a trivet is, it's just a separator. So there's little legs you can see right there. And that's just going to take it right off the bottom of the heat source. So that there's airflow. You can have water underneath there. It's just taking it right off that very hot source. So I'm going to put this right in my Dutch oven. And then we'll go ahead and follow our recipe. So we're going to pour water directly in the oven. And you don't need a whole lot of water. You really only need about a half a cup. I'm not even going to measure it. That's how little it matters. There we go. And then next what we're going to do is we're going to place the hens in there. 1, 2, and don't be afraid to get messy, that's half the fun. 3, 4. All right. Since you guys are stationary, I'll show you that I've got the 4 birds in there. And then I'm going to baste them with a base mix that I've got. So I pre-mixed it all just for time's sake. Essentially, what this is, the base, you'll see on this, it's a 1/4 cup water. We've got vinegar, melted butter, Worcestershire, and salt, right? That's all it is. And it makes a nice little base that you can put right on top of these birds. Right. Get these nice and coated. All right. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to put all the veggies on it. Now, if you wanted to, you could just pour your whole bowl in there. I like to make it look nice, so I just separate it into clumps all the way around it. So I'll start with the broccoli. I'll move this back a little bit so you can see it better. So we'll put all of our broccoli in. Put the carrots in. Cauliflower. Onion. Put some potatoes in the middle, and then the rest in the mushrooms on the side. All right. Now later we are going to keep rebasting this about every 15 or so minutes. Now when you do this, you don't have to move the vegetables out of the way. You can put the base right on top of these veggies, and it's just going to soak right into those, right onto the birds. All right. So get my lid up. So now we've got everything in the oven, and now we need to cook it, right? And on our directions here, I tell you just how to do that. So what we are going to do is bring it to right around 350 degrees. So if you were doing this at home, what you would do for this stack recipe is you're going to put about 8 to 10 charcoals on the bottom to start off with. And we're going to cook on the bottom first. So I'll show you what I'm doing here. Now I'm not going to get too close with this because I don't want any coals burning, but as you can see, these are very, very hot, glowing coals. I'm just going to take a little bit and put it right here on the stone surface, right somewhere where it's not going to catch fire. I don't need too many. put the rest back. All right, so if I were to be using charcoal, this is about the equivalent that I'm using down here. And I'm just going to take this Dutch oven, place it right on top of those hot coals. Then I'm going to let it cook for about 15 to 20 minutes with the lid off. That's going to help sear it a little bit. And then after that, while you guys are going, I'm going to put the lid on and put more coals on it. I did want to mention real quick, move my bird blood. I did want to mention real quick though that historically, you might not be using these Cornish game hens. Now, they were still around in pioneer times, at least around 1820. So right in the thick of it. Before 1820, you would have used something like a wild quail. But 1820 and on, you might still use a wild quail, but that's when the popularity of Cornish hens began. And originally, it was not for consumption. They were originally bred to be fighting birds, not condoning that. But what happened is they took two different breeds of very good fighting birds and bred them together, thinking that they would get an even better breed. Well, what had actually happened is breeding those two together actually took those game qualities, the fighting qualities out of the bird, and they were actually very easy to domesticate. And that's why we started to use them like we do today for Cornish hen recipes. They're originally not meant to do this, but they worked out perfectly. All right, so I'm just going to let this sear for about 10 minutes, and we'll go ahead and switch over to the next segment for today, and then I'll see you guys when we get back.
Thank you so much, Kyle. That's great. Really excited to see how it turns out. So should have done this at the beginning, but just a quick overview. So while Kyle is cooking, obviously there's going to be some parts of this that aren't that much to watch, right? Just to have the food sitting there cooking. So we're filling in this segment, and we're kind of looking at this as a connected program today. So Kyle's going to teach you how to cook. We have Miss Erin Shaw, who is about to join us live on screen, and she is going to talk to you about wild edibles and some things that you can find to use in your campfire cooking. And then we're going to finish up after we go check back in with Kyle and see how the meal's going. We will then go to Mandy Walske, who's going to talk today about how to find and make your own hiking stick. So once you're done with your hiking stick, you can take it out, go find yourself some wild edibles, and cook yourself a great meal. So, all right, Erin, we are going live to you now. You're on, Erin. Hey, Erin, I think you're muted.
I see that. Got it.
Okay.
All right. Yes, thanks for having me. I've been a park naturalist for 13 years, and I have been foraging all of that time. And also, even as a child, my mom would go out in the yard and pick plants out of the yard. My best friend in middle school would bring her own food with me when she came to visit my house, just because my mom would go out in the yard and find things out there to bring in to eat. So I'm going to share my PowerPoint here. Can you see that?
Yep, I'm sending it live right now, Erin. So go ahead and put it in slideshow mode, and you'll be ready to go.
Okay. Let's see. All right. Got it? Are you there?
Yeah. Do you, yeah, we can still see it on the side, but it's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. So today we're going to talk about foraging in the 4 seasons, because oftentimes people will think that you can only forage during the summer or the spring, which is a great time to go. You can also find a lot of things during the fall and during the winter. So we're going to talk about all 4 seasons. And this is for Southwest Ohio. So if you go up north, you might see different plants, and they're going to bloom at different times. There we go. Are you still with me?
Yep, you're good to go, Erin.
Okay. So we're going to talk about all 4 seasons. Each season, we'll talk about 4 plants for each season. So we're going to talk about 3 good plants and 1 bad plant. You do have to be very careful what you're picking and what you're eating. So here's my little disclaimer here. This is not a comprehensive course. Through this, I hope it inspires you to learn more. I said, all my life I've been out looking and exploring the woods and eating healthy things, but there's so much more to know. And I want to mention Jenny Richards right now. And Jenny, feel welcome at any time to pop in here. She's down at Shawnee State Park, and this is actually her forte. So there's a lot to learn. If you are harvesting wild edibles, be sure it's the right plant, the right part of the plant, the right time, and the right place. That means, if you're picking dandelions, of course you wouldn't want to pick them out of a dog park or, somewhere where the water might be polluted. So be careful where you're picking. Make sure they're in season. So like if you go to the grocery store and you find, you can tell if veggies are past their prime. So just all of these things are important. Also, you want to start off with small samples. So each person, say, some people are allergic to nuts. So just because, this is something that I like, it might not react with your body well. So keep that in mind. And you want to start with small samples. You also want to collect separately. So especially if you're collecting mushrooms or something like that, you want to keep all of this same kind together in this separate bag. Okay, and then you want to keep all of the different kinds, keep them separate. That way, and also when you're cooking them, you want to cook just a small sample of this one particular kind. And then eat that slowly, see how your body reacts to it, and then go from there. So what I'm saying is you don't want to dump a whole bunch of stuff into your pan, cook it up like a saute, because if something makes you sick, you're not going to know what it was. So start off small, and then be sure you're at the right place and the right time. You want to harvest sustainably and with etiquette. That means be careful what you're stepping on. Be aware of habitat for other animals, for other plants. And for example, if you lift up a leaf or a piece of wood, put it back down. And with mushroom etiquette, you don't want to tell your spot or tell other people's spots, because that's just like a good fishing spot. That's precious information. So and enjoy free and delicious food just from your backyard or like a park or something. Okay. Whoops. So we're going to start off with the spring. Yep. The spring is a great time to go out picking wild edibles. Of course, everything is nice and fresh. Dandelions, for example, they can become bitter if they're out in the sunshine too long, or as the season closes up. So spring is a great time. I love the violets up here. You can see in the corner. That's a great plant. I like to put them in my salad. And the spring beauties are awesome. They have little tubular roots. Morel mushrooms, of course, are a favorite. And you do have to be careful of false morels. So The three good I have listed here are morel mushrooms, spring beauties, and violets, and then false morels. Okay. You can see in the corner there, this is a false morel. That one doesn't look anything like a morel to me, really, just because it doesn't really have a stem. It's kind of clumped up on the ground. But there is a false morel called a thimble cap, and it looks very similar to the yellow morels that you see in the picture here. So be very, 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 very careful when you're going out to eat something. Even myself, you know, I consider myself a seasoned wild edible eater, and I was almost fooled by a thimble cap. It looks just like this one. The yellow morel, how you can tell that it's a true morel, is that it's connected at the base. So and then when you cut it open, true morels will be hollow inside. So the false morel that I found that looks just like this yellow one here was not connected at the base. So it kind of hung like a hula skirt, I guess, off of the stem. And then when I cut it open, there was a cotton fiber looking material inside, so it wasn't hollow in the middle. So when you go to eat something, especially mushrooms, you have to be really careful with those. There's a lot of checkoff items. So you'll want, you know, different field guides. I cross-reference things just to be sure I'm understanding in my mind. There's apps on your phone, but you want to cross-reference everything. And so please be careful, especially with the mushrooms. Okay, we're going on to summer here. Here you see purslane, puffball, and elderberry. These are all wonderful plants. The puffballs I generally eat when they're very small, about the size of a golf ball. So here's an example. If they get big and start to turn, just like a mushy mushroom in the store that you get, you wouldn't eat that. So be careful at what stage you're harvesting these things. Now, with the elderberry, I've seen a lot, like elderberry syrup, or it has a lot of uses that might help you get over a cold or something like that. Of course, it's not, I don't know. There's a poison hemlock that looks somewhat similar because they have the big white flowers. But poison hemlock is very tall. It blooms at a different time than elderberry. And poison hemlock has a thick stalk, and it has like red spots on the stalk. So again, cross-reference everything. You don't want to just go off of the first, you know, what you're be like, oh, it's got big white flowers, that's the elderberry. Please check out the stem, the flowers, what time it's blooming, and variable things. So we're going on to the fall here. The fall is a great time to get any kind of nuts. Like here we have a hickory nut. Pawpaws are awesome. They taste the mix, people say mix between a banana and a mango. You have to be careful, there's a lot of seeds, but they are delicious. You can use a pawpaw, like I make pawpaw bread, just like you would banana bread. And in the bottom corners, you see chicken of the woods. There's also a good mushroom called hen of the woods, which is good, but the jack-o'-lanterns can be deadly. Jack-o'-lanterns are really cool because they glow at night. I actually have never seen one myself. I've never found one out in the woods, but I know that they grow here. And if you look underneath of the mushroom, you can see like if there's gills or if there's false gills, or if it's solid underneath. You can take a pore print of a mushroom, so that's one way to positively identify what you have. So some of these things are deadly, so please be very, 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 very careful. And some of them are choice mushrooms, like the chicken of the woods, by the way, is delicious if you get it at the right time. So we're moving now to winter, and this past winter was my first time really looking for winter oysters, and I found plenty. That's another thing with etiquette, by the way. Don't take more than what you need or what you can eat, because the animals and you know, the trees and everything need that in the forest. So only take what you need. But the winter oysters are delicious. You can also tap maple trees and get the sap. For example, I would use the sap for like coffee. You can use the water or make your tea. So it's not just for maple syrup. I'd put my water bottle under it, you know, and just drink it straight up, but be careful you don't drink too much. And then you can also dry plants that you find and make tea later. So the bad here, you see sassafras tea, just like maple sap. If you drink too much, it can become like a diuretic or have negative effects that you're not wanting. So be careful. Here we have some plants that are always good and always bad. There's some like the mayapple that you see here. It sometimes is good to eat, and it sometimes can be toxic. It depends on what part of the season you're in, or the plant is in. So be very careful. Even though you see something in a, say in your field guide that says, oh, this is a good one to eat, but if you have the wrong part of the plant, or if it's not the right time to pick it, it can be toxic. So a couple things that are always good are cattails. All the parts of this plant are good to eat. There's different ways to fix it. Like you can take the pollen and like make a flower, or even the root is good. And dandelions are also good. You can eat the whole plant with that one too. And they're always good, as long as you have a dandelion, because just like everything else, there are some lookalikes. This dandelion right here in the picture was taken yesterday from my yard. This is a photo that I took. And if you notice, the middle leaves are more smooth, and then the outer leaves are more lobed. So this is an example just on the same plant, how it can look different. So the leaves in the middle are fresher, I guess. And if you get a dandelion that's been out in the sun too long, it can become bitter. So just be careful. And again, always bad here is the poison hemlock. They say that's what killed Socrates, because he drank poison hemlock. It does grow around here. So if you have cows or goats, or maybe your dog goes out in the field and eats grass, just be very, very careful. You should know what this one looks like. As I'm driving down the road, I see this one all over the place. It's coming up right now. It's one of the first things to start growing. It looks a bit like a fern, I guess, right now. And then towards the end of the season, it will be very tall, and it'll have big white flower heads on it. So I think that's all I have for now with this. Let's see. I don't know how to exit out of here. So do you guys have any questions?
I don't think we have any real specific questions right now, Erin, and Jenny has been commenting to folks in the comments and asking there. So thank you for that. Kyle. I see you there, Kyle. You need to unmute yourself, and let's check back in and see how our lunch is coming along.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sure can, and sending you live. So give us an update on those amazing looking Cornish game hens.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just breaking up a little bit of the wood to make some more coals. So let me put that down. So while you guys were gone and Erin was talking about all those really cool wild edibles that I can't wait to try when we can do this in person again, I went ahead and put the lid on and put the coals on. I'll see if I can bring that to you guys without burning myself. Let me put on this glove. Alright. So I'll put this back on the heat in a second. But when I bring it closer, you'll see I've got the coals on the top of the lid there. And if you can see, I don't have any in the center of the lid. I've got it all around the outside. That's going to help create a more even heat. It's not the end of the world if you put any on top. That's perfectly fine. You just really want to watch it if you do that, because when you put more directly in the middle or on both sides, it's going to cook quicker and hotter in that spot, because you kind of want that middle to be the last part of it to bake. You want to bake outward to inward. So what I'm going to do real quick is pop it open, and I'm just going to check it and put another little quick baste on there. Using my lifter, just lift this right up, and I'm a savage, and I normally will just put this on the dirty floor, but for you guys' sake, I'll show you. There's a cool little, it's another little lifter tool that's got many uses. You can use it as a hook, a lifter. You can, like if I wanted to cook in my Dutch oven that doesn't have any feet, the kitchen one, I could put that on top of it and put the coals on the bottom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this on the ground and put my lid on it so I don't get it all dirty. That's just because you guys are watching. If no one was here, I would put it on the dirty floor. All right. Woohoo! That's looking good. I'll show you guys when it's done because I want to keep the heat on there. So I'm just going to put another little quick baste on. Like I said, you can put this right on top of the vegetables. It'll soak right through it. Go right down onto that chicken. The Cornish hens. All right, that's good enough for that. I'm going to put the lid back on. All right, so the next thing I'm going to do, now that the lid's back on, I put it on in the same position. So what you want to do about every 15 to 20 minutes when you do have something cooking, especially if you're not reopening it to baste it, normally you would just leave it closed. What you're going to want to do is actually rotate the Dutch oven and the lid, and you're going to do it in opposite directions, because those coals that you're cooking with, they're not moving directions. So if by chance you've got, you know, just a little bit more on one side than the other, that side's going to bake more quickly than the other side. So when we rotate it, you're moving that fire around so you've got an even heat all the way around the ovens, right? So you'll rotate one clockwise and the other counterclockwise. So what I'm going to do is put my glove on, and I'm going to rotate the entire base just 45 degrees. And then I'm going to move the lid 45 degrees the other way, right? So now we've got a perfectly even heat as we did before, right? And then so I'm going to leave that cooking, and I'm going to move on to the next portion of the food. All right, so what we're going to do next is make a cornbread, and it's super good. This is all homemade ingredients, right? So this is not a boxed cornbread. Those are also delicious, and I've made many of them in Dutch ovens. But for this, I just wanted to show you guys how to do one from scratch, because that's always more fun when you're doing new and interesting things outdoors, like cooking with this. All right, so I did prep a little bit. Let me get my ingredients list so I can tell you what's all in there. And you can read this all for yourself on that download. So I've got 2 bowls right here next to me. One is dry ingredients, one is wet ingredients. And I'm about to mix those 2 together, but I just want to tell you what's inside of each of those, right? So the dry ingredients, I've got cornmeal, flour, sugar, baking powder, baking soda, and salt, right? And the wet ingredients, we're going to have plain yogurt, creamed corn, buttermilk, eggs, and melted butter. And we're also going to use cooking spray, but that is just for the pan. All right. So what I'm going to do for you now is I'm going to take both of my bowls. Oh, also, when Erin was doing her presentation, you guys totally missed it, but there was a big brown bat that did not like me being in here making a fire, and it was just flying in circles in here for like 5 minutes. And it finally went out the window where you guys are standing. All right, move that to the side. All right, so let's see if I can, we've got wet and we've got dry. All right, my wet's kind of sloppy, so I'm just going to pour that into the dry bowl. All right, then I'm just going to mix this all together. So I didn't pre-do everything before you guys, because I like this to be a little bit fresher. Because you can prep this ahead of time, but really don't do it more than a day ahead of time, because it's not going to last much longer than that. Just a day ahead of time in the fridge. The dry ingredients, you can pre-mix that, and that'll keep 6 months, as long as you've got it sealed in a nice area. All right, we don't have to beat this to death. If it's got a little lumps, that's fine. It'll bake into it. All right, so what I'm going to do next, let me find the Dutch oven I'm going to use for this. Is that hot? Okay. I got a nice clean Dutch oven here, and what I'm going to do for this cornbread, because I really don't want it to stick, is I'm going to put a cooking spray on there. You can put anything else on there you want. If you want to rub an oil or some lard, Crisco, you can do that for sure. This is just quick and easy for now, and it has the same effect. So I'm just going to spray this with cooking spray. Let me get this so you guys can see it. And then I'm going to use parchment paper. Now you can just use regular old store-bought parchment paper. It's going to come out in the long sheets. You just cut it to what you need. I personally like, where do I've got it? Up there. I personally, for cornbreads, I've got these circular ones, right? These are huge. These are like 20 inches long, but these are perfect for cast irons. But again, just your regular sheets of them will work just fine if you don't want to go out and find these. So now that I've sprayed the bottom of that oven, I'm going to take this and I'm going to place that down into the oven as well. And make sure that you do this before you put the heat on it, because I did that last time, and when I was putting the parchment paper in there, kind of hurt my fingers a little bit. Where's my cooking spray? And now that that's in there, just to further make sure I don't have anything sticking, because it is bread and that tends to stick, I'm also going to coat the inside of that parchment paper with just a little bit more cooking spray. All right, now that I've got that in, I'm going to pour this in. And this isn't going to be perfectly round like you're used to, or perfectly rectangle, because this is all sorts of funny shapes in here. I'll bring it over to show you what I've got going. You can see that in there. So it's sloshing all over. I poured it in there. I'll pull it up a little bit, get that to settle on the bottom. And then before I put this on the heat, I'm also going to get my dessert ready. So for the dessert, I'm doing baked apples. And I prepped these a little bit as well for time's sake. Let me show you this on our recipe card. So these are super easy to do, right? And here's everything prepped, right? So these are super easy to make, but when you're doing baked apples, you really only want to make, you don't want to make a whole lot, all right? Because these will not last. They're going to be good for maybe the first half a day or so, especially like the first hour or so, but really after a day, these aren't going to be any good. So you really just want to make these fresh every time, but they're super good every time. So I'll tell you what I've got in here. So I pre-washed them and then I pre-cored them. And to pre-core an apple, you're not going to go all the way through like you would if you were coring it and slicing apple pieces. What I did was use a melon baller, you know, that you might think of like scooping butter or something like that. And I just scooped that all the way down until I got to about the last ½ inch. You don't want to go all the way through because you want this to act as like a cup. So it's like an apple cup. And you're going to put your filling inside of that, and it's just delicious. So the filling that I made up, it's a combination of maple syrup, brown sugar, cinnamon, pecans, and then I top it with butter. And you can do this with any apple that you want. I've got Honeycrisp here, but you can use any apple you want. I like sweeter apples. All right, and then we'll go back to the instructions for it. So now we've filled all of these with that mixture, and then you saw that I have a tablespoon of butter chopped on top of each one of these. That's going to go on top, and it's going to help melt through all your ingredients, and it's just awesome. All right, so let me find the Dutch oven I'm going to use for this one. Oh, it's heavy. All right, I'm going to use a smaller Dutch oven because I'm not cooking too much. Alright. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put these directly in there. Let me find my separator there. Oh, I got it over here. There it is. 1 second, guys. All right. So I've got another trivet that I'm putting right in the bottom for the same reason we did that with the Cornish hens, because you don't want that to burn. And these apples will burn immediately. All right. Now I'm going to put a little bit of water in here. Perfect. And then I'm going to take these apples and place them right in there on that trivet. You know, when I started this fire this morning, this was feeling nice. It was still chilly, but now it's getting warm. All right, so now we've got the apples inside. And now we're ready to cook them, right? So what I'm going to do now is show you guys a stack. So I'm going to cook the apples on top because it takes the least amount of heat. So I'm going to take our cornbread that we just poured, and I'm going to put that right on top. You can see, yeah, you can see it. All right. You can see how it stacks right on top of our other Dutch oven. And then I'll put the lid right up on top of that. And so now it's getting heat from those coals on the bottom. That's on the top of the bottom one. And I'm about to add more to the top here. Again, like I was saying, you want to try to keep those coals out of the middle so you don't cook it too fast. And you really want to try to keep an eye on the cornbread because that has a tendency to burn even when you do everything right. Especially using this. All right. And then I'm going to take our apples and put those right on top of that. All right. I'll put the lid on it. Put that paper towel off of there. And then I'll put coals up on that. A little bit more. That's good. Okay, so now I've got a stack going, and in about 15-20 minutes, everything should be about done. But before we switch over, I did want to take another note about historical ingredients, because I mentioned that I'm doing this the Pioneer way, and they wouldn't have had the same ingredients that we've got today. So, for instance, how for this where we're using cane sugar for the cornbread, right? That wouldn't have been used as much, at least in the earlier part of our American history, because a lot of that cane sugar was imported early on, which was very expensive. You could still get it and use it, but it wasn't like what we had today. Instead, what they would have used would have been like a maple sugar substitute. And it's super easy to make. It's a whole lot of fun. And with ODNR, we do maple sugaring programs at a lot of different parks early on in the spring. So check out some of those programs when we do it. But you really just tap a maple tree, and you can tap pretty much any tree. It could be a sycamore, but you just tap that tree, and over time you'll get about 40-ish gallons of sap that you are going to boil down to make syrup. And then once you have that maple syrup, you're going to boil that down even further, right? And what happens when you're boiling that syrup down, it's going to start to fluff up a little bit, right? So after you boil down 40 gallons, 40 gallons of sap, you'll get about a gallon of syrup, and you boil down that gallon of syrup, and you'll get roughly around 8 pounds of sugar. But you really got to watch it because you don't want to burn that. You want to get it right when it's starting to fluff up a little bit. But yeah, so there's our stack. So now we're going to switch over to the next portion of our video, and then we get to come back to me for my favorite part where I get to eat it. All right, so thanks, guys.
Kyle, before you go, we have a couple questions.
Sure.
We had some. Do you ever preheat the Dutch oven for some recipes?
So you can preheat the Dutch ovens. You got to be careful with it. You don't want to crack anything. So if you do, don't do it for terribly long, right? You don't want to have it sitting on a fire for an hour or so. If it's 15, 20 minutes, that's fine. But make sure you've got a water or something in there, and you want to make sure that you have it seasoned, which we'll talk about in the next section. But definitely with nothing in there, no, you don't want to do that. You want to, this will last 5 lifetimes, these cast iron ovens will. And if you start to do that, it's not going to last nearly that long. So yes, but for a limited amount of time.
Perfect. And do you need to season the Dutch oven like you would a skillet?
Yes, you sure do. And I will hit on that once we get to the third section of my video.
Perfect. And then a couple others having to do with rust. They had inherited a Dutch oven with a lot of rust. Do you have any tips and tricks on helping with that?
Yeah, rust doesn't hurt a Dutch oven one little bit. You can work with it and get that off over time. That's going to be a more in-depth answer. But if you look online, there's a few different resources. There's a great guy on YouTube. His name is Mr. Chickadee. He'll go over that. Or If you download from Jenna that recipe I've got, my email will be on there, and I can really get into the specifics on how to do that. But rust on a cast iron does not hurt it one little bit.
Perfect. And one last question. Can you use the cast iron skillet to make cornbread in the same process?
Well, yes. So that's what I'm doing right now. So I'm doing it in the Dutch oven. And actually, I'll show you guys. I didn't think I was going to be putting this on the video, but here's one of my cast iron skillets. But this is an enameled one, so you see it's all nice and pretty, but it's cast iron on the inside. And you can do it right inside of here too, but you really want to do it on a very low heat because you'll burn the bottom of that cornbread really, really quickly if you try to have it on a high heat. But you can absolutely make it on there. Just turn it down low like you're going to slowly cook a pancake. But do it in the same properties where you kind of make sure you season it down and it's not going to stick. But yeah, you can absolutely do it in a skillet right on your stovetop or right on a campfire with another cast iron skillet. Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kyle. And we're going to be going, appreciate all your knowledge. We're going to be going on to Jenny Richards, who's going to give us some information about some really easy, fun to do recipes and some great references for wild edibles. Jenny?
Hello, good to be here with you all today. I just want to expand a little bit on Erin's presentation and share some of my favorite books that I use when I'm out collecting, which I really actually don't do much collecting, just a little tiny bit in my own yard because the plants are out there for a reason. They've got lots of pollinators and animals that rely on them and depend on them. So I like to leave all that stuff in the wild where it belongs. And I put some plants that I like to eat right in my own yard, trees, shrubs, and flowers that I like to munch on a little bit right in my own yard. And that's where I do my harvesting. But this is a really great resource. The Peterson's Field Guide to Wild Edibles is a really nice resource. It's got lots of great information in there. It tells you what part of the plant to eat, what time of the year, all that stuff Erin was talking about with the 4 R's, the right plant, the right part, the right time, and the right place. So this book is very helpful. It's a great resource. And if you were thinking of eating plants, like Erin said, you've got to be very careful. And if you have any, like if you're taking any medications, certain plants can react adversely to the medication that you're taking. So you want to really do your research, because if you don't, you might do something that doesn't make you feel well, and we don't want that at all. But this is another great resource. This is the Newcomb's Wildflower Guide, which has a dichotomous key. So you can answer yes/no questions to key down things that you want to eat. A wild salad is always fun. So you can, if you have in your yard some violets, you can collect some violet leaves this time of year and just throw a few leaves and flowers on your salad. Maybe you have some chives growing up in your yard you can add to your salad. But we are in no way suggesting that you make a whole entire meal out of things from the yard, but that you add to whatever it is that you're eating already. One of the things that I like to do is I like to eat invasive species. So I make some autumn olive jelly, and this is what that is. This is autumn olive jelly, and you take the berries and you just, like you would make any jelly, you boil and you strain the juice through cheesecloth, and you use equal parts liquid to sugar, and you add some pectin, and you follow the recipe. But we have some recipes to share with you for violet jelly if you're interested in trying a wild jelly. The one thing I want to say about violets if you're harvesting is that fritillary caterpillars overwinter as a caterpillar, and that they're down there at the bottom of the violet leaves, so they're waiting to munch up those leaves. So be really careful if you harvest violet leaves or violet flowers, that there's not already some munch marks, or that you're not gobbling up fritillary caterpillars, which make beautiful fritillary butterflies. One thing that's getting ready to happen right now is the red buds are getting ready to pop. So the buds are out. I saw them in my yard today, but they're tiny right now. As soon as the buds swell a little bit further, you can make red bud vinegar. You can use any kind of vinegar you like. I prefer rice vinegar. It's a little sweet. You just take a jar, fill it with red bud buds, before they flower, before they open. And red buds are also great to throw in a salad, just a few. And remember, plant a red bud in your own yard. You'll be amazed at all the little animals you see come to pollinate it. Take some red bud, put them in the jar, then put your favorite vinegar over it, fill it, put it in a cool, dark area, and turn it every couple of weeks or every week, turn it up and down, leave it there for about a month, and then strain, and you have this beautiful red bud vinegar, which you can make your favorite vinaigrette with. One more thing I'll share before we get on to the next person is this. This is pickled daylily buds. Now, lilies, lots of lilies are edible. Would I eat a trout lily? No. I don't like to eat spring ephemerals because they're so fleeting. They come up so quickly and they provide all this food and wonderfulness for our native insects, which we need to survive. So I wouldn't eat that, but the daylilies are actually not native. And the buds are delicious. You can eat lots of parts of daylilies. So I just pick the buds and I pickle them in my favorite pickling recipe. It's just vinegar, sugar, a little dash of salt, and they're great in the refrigerator. You can leave them for a long time. They're nice and crunchy, and they're really, really tasty treat. So you can eat the invasives. If you can't beat them, eat them. That's what I say about invasive species. So we're always here for you for resource. Anytime you want to reach out to any of your naturalists who love this kind of stuff, please do. Give us a call or email us. I don't know if you want me to keep sharing, but I know there's other people who need to talk.
Yep.
So
Jenny, thank you. I love that. If you can't beat them, eat them.
That's right.
That is some great advice, and I love pickled anything, and I know that Lauren is a big fan of pickles too, so you're gonna have to share some of those daylilies with us one of these days when we're down that way.
I would love to.
Thank you so much, Jenny. Next up is Mandy Walske from Cowan, and Mandy is going to talk to us today about making a hiking stick. You are going live right now, Mandy, so there you go. Thanks.
Hi, I would like to chime in here with that. If you can't beat them, eat them. There is tons of garlic mustard at my park. If anybody would like to try some pesto or some spaghetti sauce with that, let me know. It makes for a really good topper on a salad too, spices things up a little bit. I got plenty to share. So I made a video for you guys today, even though I'm live with you here, because I spent a lot of time in the woods looking for sticks to talk to you about the best kinds to use. And I did everything at the park. And today I'm joining you from home instead of there. So I'm going to start, and I hope you enjoy.
Hang on just 1 second, Mandy. Took it a second to come up. It should be showing now. Hey, Mandy, let's relaunch that. We don't seem to have the video, the audio feed. Are you ready to go again? You're muted, Mandy. All right, we're going to give Mandy just a second to get that going. Sometimes it takes a couple of tries to get the audio to go with the video, so we will give her just a second. Thank you so much for all the questions that we've had. They have been great. If we don't get to them right now in the presentation, the question and answer box will be open for a few minutes after we're done, so you can ask there. A number of you have sent me an email asking for the recipe, so it'll probably be a couple of days, but yeah, when we're done with this, we will get all of these resources together, and we are more than happy to send them out to you to get you some PDFs. So you can try some of these great recipes yourself. And a few of you have also shared your favorite recipes with us, which we appreciate. I believe it was Keith mentioned pizza. Pizza is actually a favorite of ours here at ODNR and is one of the recipes that we use when we get to do our in-person OWAs. So if anybody in the audience has been to one of our programs before, chime in again in the chat. We'd love to know if we have any veterans here. We don't know yet. So if we are able to do an in-person OWA this year, it is going to be in September. I believe it's the weekend of the 18th. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure that it's the weekend of the 18th in September. And this year it will be at Salt Fork State Park. But again, if we are able to do in-person gathering, we don't know yet. If not, look forward for some more online programs like this. I know the next one we have up is we're going to do a virtual OWA program talking about all of our paddle sports and doing some introductory paddling. So anyhow, I'm going to go back to Mandy. Are you good to go, Mandy?
I don't know. Let's try.
We'll find out.
Hi, I'm
Okay, hold on just a second. Let me pull that up, and I am sending you live, and hopefully we've got the audio going this time.
Hi, I'm naturalist Mandy from Cowan Lake State Park, and I'm here today to talk to you about my hiking stick and the process that I used to get it where it is today. The first thing you'll need to do is find a good sturdy stick. Mine is made out of cherry and came from a fallen tree in my own yard. Some other good woods to use are the harder woods and not the soft woods like maple. So you could use your oaks, your ash. I have actually seen people make their hiking stick out of honeysuckle, which is a great use for an invasive plant. When you're here at the park and you're looking for a stick, you can collect from the woods. The only thing you want to make sure you're not doing is cutting down limbs from a live tree. When selecting a branch, you do want to make sure that it is sturdy. We found some out in the woods today that break very easily. You want to be able to rely on your hiking stick. So if this were to break while I was hiking, say in some rugged terrain, I could end up getting hurt if I'm relying on a non-sturdy stick. Some of these can look like they're very sturdy, and actually they're not. It's a softer wood, and it does break when you lean on it. If you find a stick that is recently fallen, you can tell most of the time if it doesn't look like it has already started to turn tan. If it looks clean and fresh, that might be a good one to start with. If you see any that have cracks, probably not a good idea. You want to look for a stick that is more fresh, because the more damage there is to the stick, the less likely it is to be a good hiking stick. Please join me at the table so we can show you how we made the rest of our hiking stick. Once you find a stick that is sturdy, you want to make sure that it fits your hand comfortably. In this instance, the stick is so small that my hand wraps around it and my fingernails end up digging into my hand. That is very uncomfortable. At the end of this stick, this part is so big, it's almost cumbersome and might hinder my hike. It does make for a good sturdy bottom though. At the other end of that same stick, my hand can wrap comfortably around the stick, and for the most part, it is easy to hold and would not bother me while out on a hike. Let's talk about height. So for height, there are a lot of websites out there that are going to try to get you to make specific adjustments. Like if you're 6 foot tall, your stick should be 5 foot tall. I don't want you to focus on that. I want you to feel good about your stick, and it should become part of you while you're hiking. I would not feel comfortable with a stick this size. For me to be able to really hold on to it, I feel that I am working too hard. My arm is down too low. It doesn't have a high enough point on it that if I'm really struggling, I can get a good grip on. So this one is about the height of my armpit. I'm just not comfortable with that. This stick that I'm going to be making my hiking stick out of this time is really tall, and I think it's a little too tall for me. Now my problem here is that I normally like to have my hand with a little bit of stick left above it. This is just slightly too tall. Notice it's almost the same height as I am. For me, I feel like my arm is too high up. My favorite hiking stick, the one we're talking about today, this is almost perfect for me. It has a comfortable grip that fits right in my hand. It's a good height for me, just above my shoulder. It has got me through the last 4 years of some pretty awesome hikes. And I think from now on, this will be the height that I choose for all my hiking sticks. Once you've had your stick cut to the right size, you need to decide how you're going to prepare your hiking stick. With a bark that is really grooved and rough, I would suggest taking the bark off. If you find a stick like this one that has a nice smooth bark, you can choose to leave the bark on. For mine, I chose to take the bark off. Let's talk about some of the tools I used to cut off the knobs on my stick and remove the bark. When we first brought this stick out of the woods, it had quite a few small branches sticking off of it. We used these hand pruners to get some of the thinner ones off of the edges. For the larger ones, we used bigger pruners and we cut off the bigger sections of the branch. You can also use a hacksaw to get really close down along the edge if you want to get rid of the knots completely. Or a bow saw works as well. Let's talk about safety. So I'm wearing some gloves that have some Kevlar fibers in them because I am getting ready to use a knife. You do want to make sure you're always safe. When you're getting ready to take the bark off, a sharp knife is the safest knife for you to use because it will allow the knife to do most of the work and not get caught up and stuck. These are two different hand knives that I have here, kind of like a pocket knife. This can be a long and tedious process, especially when you're doing it just a little bit at a time. But I found this the most relaxing and really enjoyed myself when I was making my first hiking stick. To go a little bit faster, you may choose to use a drawl knife. This drawl knife gets the job done faster, but it can gouge your stick, so be careful when you're using it. Once you've removed all of your bark, you want to get some sandpaper. This is going to help your hiking stick be nice and smooth. You would start with either a 60 or 80 grit sandpaper. This rough grit is going to allow you to remove and get most of the big chunks of wood off of your hiking stick. It's pretty simple. Just use your sandpaper, push nice and firm, and you can watch it as it starts to pull off some of that wood. When you want it to be really smooth, you just go up in numbers on your sandpaper. Here I have a 120 and a 180. This is going to allow me to get even smoother. So I'm going to keep going. I suggest doing the whole hiking stick at the same time so that you don't lose track of where you're at. Much better. Now, if you want a really smooth hiking stick, I suggest going up to a 400. Maybe not to a 600 or 1,000, but at least a 400. That's going to give you a really nice, smooth hiking stick. Oh yeah. Now that's comfortable. Now that you've got your hiking stick as smooth as you would like it, I suggest putting on some polyurethane to protect and preserve your wood, especially for trails that are nice and muddy. The first thing you want to do is use a damp cloth to remove any dust left over from sanding. After you apply your first coat to the entire stick, you're going to want to use that 400 sandpaper and do a light sanding over the polyurethane to give it a nice smooth finish for the next coat. On my hiking stick, I used 3 coats, and I am so glad that I did because it's lasted me 4 years. Another thing you can do to protect your hiking stick is to put a cap on the bottom of it. This can be metal or off of the bottom of an old pair of crutches. To truly make your hiking stick your own, I suggest a little bit of decoration. I chose this stick, this section of this stick, because to me, this little knob appears to look like a screech owl hiding in his tree. Another thing that I did was use paracord to make myself a nice handle that helps me grip onto my hiking stick. I have a small hole through the top here that will allow me to run a strip of leather through it to give me a wrist strap. Some people who are really good can carve an animal or their name or other kinds of decorations into their stick. A lot of state parks that have stores also sell hiking medallions. Hiking medallion is a little piece of metal that just nails right into your hiking stick. You can get these and decorate the whole stick or just one to show your favorite hike. Now that your hiking stick is finished, what do you use it for? Some of the ways I use my hiking stick is to help me over rough terrain so that I don't fall. I test to see how deep water is on a trail so I know if I'm going to get my boots wet. Coming up or going down a steep slope, your hiking stick can help you not slip and slide. One of the best uses for a hiking stick is to get the spider webs down off of the trail in front of you instead of letting them hit you in the face. I keep the trails clean with my hiking stick by flinging the scat back in the woods where it belongs. Thanks for joining me here at Cowan Lake. I'm really glad that I got to be part of the Ohio Women's Outdoor Adventure and share with you how to take a stick from the woods and turn it into a beautiful work of art.
Thank you so much, Mandy. That was really interesting. That's something I've never done before, so I was watching that very closely. We do have one comment, question about it. Someone said that most barks will come off easiest if the wood is harvested in the spring when the growth spurt is happening.
Yes, there was a lot of things that I ended up leaving out for time's sake. But when you harvest your stick right away, it's really easy to just peel that bark off. It's actually fun. So if you have children at home, just hand them that stick one day and just let them sit and peel it off. It's the easiest thing to entertain a kid. Another thing that I left out of there, my hiking stick, actually, when I removed the bark, I left it sit for a year. And the reason I did that was so that all the sap on the inside of the stick, yes, it's cherry, not pine, but it still has sap inside. So I let it dry for a year before I started doing the sanding and the sealing. So I didn't seal any sap inside the stick that could cause it to rot from the inside out.
We also have 2 comments from our users that a really good use of the hiking stick is to clear spider webs from your trail.
That was one of my favorite things that I put in here. You know, we have coyotes like most parks do, and a lot of times I find coyote scat on the trails, especially if I'm hiking early in the morning and the coyotes have been through. So I just use the end of that stick and just fling that back into the woods so my visitors don't end up stepping on it. So spider webs, flinging scat, you know, it's all part of the fun with the hiking stick.
Very handy tool to have. Thank you so much, Mandy. And we are going to go back to Kyle. Kyle, please unmute yourself because we're about to send you live, and Kyle is going to show us our finished product here.
All right, I think you guys can hear me now. All right, welcome back, everybody. So now we're at my favorite part of this, the part where I get to eat it all. So it all should be about done right now. I've kind of kept an eye on it while you guys were gone. So just gonna pop the lid off of all these. Yeah, looks great. Go ahead and take the heat off of it. And what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna lift up each of the lids. I'm just gonna pour the coals back into my fire just so I can stop it from heating. The cast iron is still gonna be hot for quite a while, but I'm gonna stop it from increasing its heat.
Yeah. Go to the middle of the room and come back. We're sitting right here. All right.
You know what, I'm gonna show you this too, folks. I'm gonna show you everything that's cooked. Here are those apples. Look at that. Look how melty that is. All right.
Those look amazing, Kyle. I don't know about you guys, I'm starving.
Take the lid off of that one. I didn't burn it. All right, here is our nice cooked cornbread. And we're gonna just double check real quick. To make sure that it's fully cooked, just take a toothpick, poke it in there. Same old, same old. I'm not teaching you anything new. Unless you've never heard of the toothpick method, then welcome to the toothpick method. And it didn't stick. Perfect. All right. I'll take that off the heat. And now we'll see how the Cornish hens are looking. All right. Whew, it's heavy. All right, check this out. Let me get that in the camera.
Wow,
Everything.
Kyle, that looks fantastic.
Yeah. Now, for safety's sake, I do want to make sure that y'all know if you're cooking bird, 165 degrees. So make sure you always check it. All right.
Kyle, that looks incredible. I wish we were all down there at Hocking with you today so we could partake.
I'm super bummed you're not here. I'm going to have to eat this all myself now.
Well, it'd take about 2 hours, but if you want to keep it warm. We do have one question.
Sure.
Louis wanted to know, did you have to add or swap any coals?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So this whole time, when I put the coals on top of the ovens, they are continuously burning, but they're also decreasing in size. So in order to keep that even bake, you want to keep adding coals as they get burned away. So you keep the same amount of mass on top of it and on the bottom the entire time. So yeah, I was adding a scoop here and there to all three sections.
Great, thank you.
And now what I'm going to do real quick is I'm going to make a plate up and I'm going to set it off to the side so it can cool down a second, and then we're going to talk about something else real quick. So let me... A little bit of veggies. I wonder if this counts as my lunch break.
I think we can at least give you 30 minutes to eat in peace, Kyle. You don't have to do it live.
All right. All right. So everything didn't fit on one plate, but I'm going to bring these up one more time so you guys can see what we are working with the finished product. Whew. So we've got the baked apple right there. Everything's all melty. And then here's that finished result with the cornbread. So it got a little dark on the bottom. That's okay. It's still pretty looking good.
Kyle, I have a question.
Yeah.
What apples do you recommend? Have you done different kinds?
I have. So you can use any type of apples you want. My favorite is Honeycrisp. I typically like to do a sweeter apple, but that's all on taste. You can do this with any apple you want, but whatever one you pick, make sure that it's at least a decent size, because when you go to core it, if you're using a melon baller, you are taking a huge chunk out of the middle. So you want to make sure there's still some apple left when you're done.
Thanks, Kyle.
Yeah, good point. And Honeycrisp are the best. That is my favorite too.
Don't want to brag or nothing, but check out this bird. Well, if I can get it to focus.
Nice. Very nice.
All right, I'm going to set this to the side just for a second. And I wanted to mention a couple things. First, I know you see me here in front of a big old fireplace. And when you think about cast iron, you might think of, pioneer times, cooking over a campfire. I wanted to make you aware that you do not need a huge setup like this to be able to do this, right? I live near the city, and I'm on the second story of an apartment, right? But I still cast iron cook right on my balcony. And how you can do this, it's super simple. I just take a pizza pan, right? You put the pizza pan on a table or whatever you got outside that can get a little warm. You could do it right on a grill. And then I would put my coals right on here. I would use charcoal. And then I would put my Dutch oven on top and then coals on top of that. And you can do it right here. This is your mini little mobile kitchen area. All right, so I know earlier I had some questions about seasoning, and now I'm going to answer those. So we're going to talk about cleaning, and I'm going to demonstrate here with my already cleaned one because I've still got food in all my other ones. So when you start to clean, it's better to do it as soon after cooking as you can. So if you've got a place to transfer all your food to, do that, because it's easiest to clean when these ovens are still warm, because that's going to heat up your water and it just helps scrubbing than it is when it's cold. And what you're going to do with that, oh, there it is. I was looking for that. Okay, cool. What you're going to do with it is you'll just take a scraper, nothing fancy. You can buy these at any store online. They're just little hard plastic scrapers. And what you do with them, this is slippery, is you just scrape the walls, the bottom, and it's not going to damage your cast iron in the smallest. It's going to scrape all that food particles off, and you can keep sloshing around that warm water from the heat of this, and it's going to help clean it. And I wanted to mention too that if you ask anybody, it doesn't matter how long they've been doing cast irons, typically they will always tell you not to use soap on cast iron, and I want to say that is mostly true, but a little bit of soap won't hurt, right? So if you want to use some dish soap, that's completely fine, but you just want to use just a little bit of it, just enough to actually clean the surface, and that won't hurt a thing, and you just wash it off. What happens when you use a lot of it is that seasoning that we mentioned before, which is just a buildup over time of additional layers of seasoning, you're going to rub that off, and you'll have to start all over again, which nobody that cooks with cast iron wants to do. Right, so a little bit won't hurt, just don't overdo it because you don't want to take off that seasoning layer. All right, so you got it all scraped and it's all clean now. once you get it completely dry, then you'll start to season it. Now, when you are drying it, let me see, this one might do it. Yeah, so when you are drying it, you might see some residue. If I can get that to focus, it's kind of bright. Essentially, it's just black that comes off of it. That's perfectly fine. That's just part of the seasoning of the ovens. It's not going to hurt anything. You want that on there. Just be cautious. You know, you don't want to get that all over your clothes. But I don't think you're super worried about that doing this kind of cooking anyway, because it's kind of a very involved process. But just know if you see that black residue, you're totally fine. So then once you get it all dry, then you're going to put more seasoning on. And essentially all seasoning does, it helps the cast iron to not rust. And you're also helping it to not stick. And you can use many, many things, right? There are specific seasoning sprays out there. You can use a shortening. I use that because it's easy to buy in large quality. You can use any kind of oils. What you're doing is you're just going to, and I can do it, you can't over season the thing. So I'll show you what I'm doing with the shortening. So I'll just take this paper towel I've got here, and I'm just going to get a nice glob of this shortening on here. And then what I'm doing is I'm just rubbing that, you see it in there, yeah. I'm just rubbing that all over the inside of it, right? And that's going to add a nice, another layer of seasoning. And you want to do this every time you cook, after every single time you cook. And when you're doing it too, you also want to make sure you get the rim around it. Don't miss that. Because if by chance it wasn't completely dry, you get some moisture in there, it is a terrible time trying to pry off a rusted lid from the base, right? The rust doesn't hurt it, but it sucks to try and pull that off. So yeah, just make sure you season everywhere that was moist, right? You don't have to season the outside of it. That doesn't need anything other than maybe a good wipe down so it's not covered in char. Let me put my lid on this before I stick my hand in Crisco. So historically, we really wouldn't have used shortening, right? We would have used lard, animal fat, which you can still do. You can buy that right at your local store. They still sell lard if you don't want to save it up at your own house. That's what they would have done in the past before using oil and all that. A good little shout out. Now, let me get another paper towel here. So you're going to want to store these after you get it seasoned in just a cool and dry place. You don't have to take any special precautions as long as it's cool and dry. And when you do it, right, just take a paper towel, fold it up a little bit to get it a little thick. All I did is fold it about 5 times. And then you're going to put that right on the edge of your cast iron Dutch oven. And then you'll put your lid on it. So it's right in between. So it's going to leave a little bit of a gap. Just like that. And that's also going to help you, just in case there's a little bit of moisture left in there that you may have missed and didn't realize. So now I'm about done. You don't have to watch me eat if you don't want to. I'm going to take a bite of everything. I think I brought a fork. There it is. Oh, and also too, this is the thing I thought I forgot. I wasn't going to mention it. But those scrapers that I showed you is a great tool. My favorite tool is a chainmail scrubber, right? Mine looks just like this. You can buy a bunch of different brands of them out there. And they're also easy to make too, a little time consuming. If you just take those little key rings and you get the really, really small ones and you just chain link all those together around some sort of sturdy sponge, or this one's got a sturdy plastic frame inside. You can make it yourself too. Super easy. But don't over scrub with these because you'll scratch that seasoning right off. You're not going to hurt your pan, but this will bring it off. So just enough pressure on there to just get the gunk off. All right. So I'll go ahead. Woohoo! I'm just going to eat a leg. This leg just fell right off. Yes. Yeah, if you want to make it here, feel free to come on down. It is prime.
All right,
that's
Kyle,
all I've got for you
let
folks.
you eat in peace.
Thanks for joining me in the
Thank you
cabin.
so much. Big thank you to everyone who joined us today. We really appreciate it. We're hoping to do more of these, so watch the Facebook page for more information. And hang on, so I'm trying to share my screen. Hold on just a second. We will put up some contact information for you in the chat. You've got my email, Jenna Winters, and also on the screen that we are showing right now. Hopefully you can see it. You should have, so there's my information there. I'm Jenna Winters. Anything you want to know about the virtual presentation, please email me. We will get to, so I've been communicating with a couple of you via email during this. And just so you know, give us a couple of days. We're going to put all of this together in a packet. We will send you the recipes and the references. A couple of people asked for the references that Jenny was talking about. So give us a couple days. We will get this all together and email it out to you. If anyone is interested, excuse me, in the in-person OWA program, the coordinator for that is Heidi Hetzel Evans. And I've put her email there as well. It's Hetzel-Evans. She will be the one who can give you information about the in-person program. Like I said before, we're hopeful, got our fingers crossed for this fall, but in the event that we aren't able to go in person this fall, we, like I said, you know, keep track of our social media because we'll be doing more programs like this. And hey, if not this fall, then for sure in 2022. Again, thanks a bunch for joining us. We really had a good time today. We hope you enjoyed it.